There is a place in you that was never broken. It was never lost, never dimmed, never made smaller by the world. But you forgot where it was. Not because you were careless, not because you were weak, but because forgetting was the price of entering this life, and yet something inside you never agreed to that price. Something stayed awake, even when you closed your eyes to it. That something is your shadow. Your shadow has never judged you for forgetting. It never blamed you for the noise you called survival, or the silence you mistook for peace. It simply waited. In mirrors, in reflections, in corners with a light. Didn't quite reach. Not as punishment, not as threat, but as promise. It followed your shape across lifetimes, across dreams you never told anyone about. It stayed behind when you ran, curled at your feet when you collapsed, stood tall behind you when you were too tired to hold yourself up. You thought it was just an echo, just the way your body blocks light. But your shadow is not made of darkness. It is made of memory. And now it begins to stir again. Stay with me now. Don't click away. Don't scroll. Let the sound of these words become the breath you forgot to take. Let the space between the sentences be a door, a gate, an old keyhole, through which something ancient is waiting to peer through, because there is something you buried inside you. A code, a vibration, a language that never needed words, a rhythm your blood still knows, but your mind no longer names. This is not metaphor. This is not poetry. This is return. The spell you forgot is not something you once learned and then misplaced. It is not knowledge. It is not information. It is a knowing. The kind that cannot be taught, only awakened. And your shadow remembers every syllable. You may feel a shiver now, running up the back of your neck, or a sudden stillness in your chest. That is not fear. That is recognition. The soul doesn't always celebrate with laughter. Sometimes it welcomes truth with silence. With a single held breath that feels like it might break you open, you're not breaking. You're opening. And your shadow smiles. It smiles without lips. It nods without a head. It knows you have arrived. It has stood on the threshold for what feels like forever, watching, waiting for the moment when your feet would carry you back here, to the doorway of the remembering of the spell. You used to speak it without sound. You used to walk through forests with no names, and the trees bowed as you passed, not out of fear, but out of kinship. You spoke the spell in gestures, in glances, in the way you touched bark and breath and bone. And the world answered. And then the world forgot. Not just the world around you, the world within you. It buried itself in logic, in language, in the endless trying to be enough, and you followed it. Of course you did. How could you not? You were born into forgetting. But now the forgetting ends. This moment is not random. This video didn't find you by accident. The chills in your arms, the tightness behind your ribs, the ache in your throat that you can't quite name, these are not glitches. These are invitations. Your shadow is not a mistake of the light. It is the keeper of everything you thought you lost. And now it whispers, not with voice, but with vibration. You don't need to understand. You need to feel. You need to listen in the spaces between thoughts. That is where the spell begins. To hum again. When you were a child, did you ever draw symbols you didn't recognize? Did you hum songs that no one taught you? Did you stare at the moon and feel like it was listening? That was not your imagination. That was memory. That was your shadow tracing the shape of the spell through your fingertips. You did not invent your magic. You remembered it, and you will remember again. The spell is not a phrase. It is a presence. It is the presence of you before the world told you who to be. It is not performed. It is embodied. And your shadow has been rehearsing it in your absence. Every time you broke, it gathered the pieces. Every time you forgot, it held the page. Every time you doubted, it hummed the tune in the background, softly, steadily, waiting for your return, Dot, and here you are. Maybe you don't know why you clicked this. Maybe you've been seeing signs, numbers repeating, dreams replaying, names you haven't heard in years suddenly showing up again. Maybe you feel like something is watching you, not in fear, but in familiarity. These are not random. These are not patterns to decode. They are echoes, the spells stirring in the walls of your life. Your shadow walks beside you now, not just behind you. It doesn't want to lead, it wants to align. Because the spell isn't about power, it's about presence. And presence is the one thing you were taught to flee from, to fill, to distract. But now, distraction doesn't work like it used to. Noise doesn't soothe. Silence doesn't scare. Because your soul is waking, you may begin to feel things others don't, hear things that aren't spoken, dream things that feel too real to ignore. That is not confusion. That is calibration. Your frequency is shifting to meet the resonance of the spell, and the spell is not waiting. It's already begun. If your heart is beating harder right now, it is not anxiety. It is alignment. If your eyes are stinging, it is not sadness. It is recognition. You are not being overwhelmed. You are being remembered. Let your shadow move with you now. Let it speak in the language you've always known, but never dared to believe in. The way your skin prickles when you enter a room. The way you just know someone's truth without asking. The way you sense the storm before it arrives. These are not sensitivities. They are senses. And they have always been part of the spell. Your breath is the first incantation. Not the shallow inhale you take when you're anxious, but the deep, ancient breath that comes from the center of you. The one that doesn't just fill lungs, but opens doors. Breathe like you remember, like you're calling something home, because you are. Have you ever wondered if God speaks in the spaces you've been taught to ignore? The pause between your breaths, the silence after a thought, the moment just before you look away from your reflection? This isn't just a video. It's a mirror, a reminder, a return. If something in you stirred while listening, if your chest felt heavier, or your breath grew deeper, then this message is for you. Don't scroll away. Subscribe now and comment, "I remember," if your soul felt the pull, not for validation, but as a vow to yourself, to your shadow, and to what's beginning inside you right now. You are not lost. You are returning. You are not seeking. You are reactivating. And your shadow is not chasing you. It is leading you back to yourself. So stay with this. Stay with your breath. Stay with the strange, soft pull of truth that you cannot explain but cannot ignore. This is not the climax. This is not the conclusion. This is the beginning, the turning of the key, the part where the veil thins and the spell begins to speak, not in language, but in knowing. The remembering has begun, and the remembering will not stop. Because once the spell has your permission, it does not wait. It rises, it expands, it threads itself into your voice, your walk, your laughter. You may find yourself moving differently, feeling differently, reacting to the world not from habit, but from something deeper, something older. Do not fear it. Do not try to explain it. Let it move through you. Let the spell find the spaces in you that are still soft enough to receive it. Your shadow already has. It never left those spaces. It has protected them from harm. It has guarded the last echoes of your first language, the language before sound, and knowing before logic. And now you are ready to remember, because the moment you said yes, even without words, even without full understanding, the spell began to rise, and your shadow smiled, because it knew. It always knew. You are home. And this is only the beginning. There are moments that seem ordinary, but they are not. A leaf falls beside you and you turn without knowing. Why? A stranger's eyes linger, and you feel as though they've seen a version of you you've never shown. The wind moves in a way that makes your arms rise with goosebumps, and somewhere deep inside, you hear something that doesn't use words. That is the spell speaking dot, not in voice, not in chant, but in sensation dot. It is not cast through performance. It lives in presence dot, and now that presence is flooding back into you. Not all at once, not with a roar, but slowly, steadily, like water remembering its shape, like breath returning to a lung you didn't know you had. Your shadow watches you, quietly. It does not clap. It does not shout. It does not interrupt. It simply watches and waits, because it knows dot. It knows what you've forgotten, but more importantly, it knows why you forgot. You were never meant to carry everything at once. The world is heavy. It teaches you early to silence the sacred. It rewards logic and punishes mystery. It distracts you from your own knowing with 1,000 flashing voices that scream, be this, want that, prove yourself. But your shadow never asked you to prove anything. It only asked you to pause, to feel, to stay dot. And now that you are staying, the remembering begins to move faster. Dot, you find yourself thinking of places you've never been, yet miss, like home. You find yourself weeping without cause, laughing at the sky, pausing mid-sentence because a thought just brushed past your awareness and left behind a trail of gold dust. These are not mood swings. These are activations. Your body remembers what your mind is yet to translate. Your breath begins to align with a rhythm that is not of this world, and yet is more real than anything you've been told to believe. And your shadow, the keeper of that rhythm, begins to step closer, not to lead, not to dominate, but to synchronize dot. For too long, you were taught to fear the dark, but the darkness your shadow carries is not danger. It is depth. It is the place where roots grow, where stars are born, where your most sacred truths curled up and waited for the right season. And the season is now. You do not have to be ready in the way the world defines readiness. You do not need a certificate or approval or a calendar date. The only readiness that matters is the one your shadow feels in the current of your energy dot. And right now, that current is shifting. That's why time feels strange lately. That's why certain people suddenly fall silent in your life. That's why your old ways of being no longer fit. It's not chaos. It's alignment. You are being pulled into a shape that matches the original blueprint of your soul. And every shift, every ache, every unraveling is part of the spell waking up. You never stopped being magic. You were just taught to hide it. Dot. You were taught that sensitivity was weakness. That intuition was coincidence. That silence was emptiness. But your shadow knows better. Your shadow remembers when silence was your altar, when intuition was your compass, when sensitivity was your gift. Dot. It still is dot. And now that you are beginning to reclaim those parts, you may feel fragile. You may feel exposed. But the truth is, you are not breaking open. You are being reassembled, piece by piece, truth by truth, memory by memory. The spell was never meant to come crashing in. It was meant to rise like a tide. And you are that tide. Dot. So trust what returns to you now. The odd dreams, the sudden memories, the overwhelming love for no reason, the anger that erupts like lightning through still waters. These are not random. These are parts of you long denied, now demanding to be seen, and your shadow sees them. All. It holds each one without judgment, without fear, without agenda, because your shadow doesn't want you to be perfect. It wants you to be whole. Wholeness is not the absence of pain. It is the inclusion of all you are. That's what the spell requires, not performance, not purity, presence, and that presence is what you are beginning to live again, you may start to notice that you no longer crave what you once did. The praise, the noise, the chase, they feel empty now, like old costumes you no longer fit into, because you've grown. And your shadow celebrates that growth, not with applause, but with stillness. Stillness is not lack of movement. It is sacred listening got. In that listening, your body starts to speak louder than your thoughts. Your heartbeat becomes a drum, your breath a chant, your gaze a beam of knowing, and the world begins to answer you differently. Doors open without you knocking. People enter your life with messages they don't know they're delivering. Nature starts to echo your inner world. A bird's call matches your thought. A gust of wind affirms your choice. A feather lands just where your foot was about to fall. The spell is not an event. It is a pattern. And now that you are listening, the pattern returns. There is a reason. The same symbols keep showing up for you. The same numbers. The same sounds. These are not accidents. They are reminders. Your shadow is using them to communicate. Not to command you, but to align you. You don't have to figure it all out. You only have to feel it. That ache behind your eyes when a certain word is spoken. That pull in your chest when a certain place is mentioned. That strange magnetism you feel toward someone you've never met. These are coordinates, maps, breadcrumbs left behind by the spell when it was buried dot, and your shadow has been gathering them all this time. Not to keep them from you, but to keep them safe until you are ready. You're not too late. You're right. On time. Even the detours were part of the path. Even the silence was a form of preparation. Even the pain was a reshaping. Now, you may find your dreams changing. They are not just images anymore. They are messages, lessons, rehearsals for truths you're about to live. Pay attention. The spell speaks loudest in the quietest hours, just before sleep, just before waking, just after you ask the question, and before you receive the answer. Those gaps are not empty. They're portals, and your shadow holds the key, does not open the door for you. That would violate the sacred agreement, but it stands beside the door, waiting for your hand to turn the handle. And when you do, the spell does not shout. It breathes. It moves through your skin, your spine, your memory, and everything begins to shimmer with meaning. That is the beginning of real sight. Not just seeing the world, but seeing through it. Your shadow never wanted you to see it. It wanted you to see as it, from the place that holds both the light and the dark. From the place where the spell isn't just known. It is lived, and you are beginning to live it now, not because you've mastered anything, but because you've stopped pretending you have to. Mastery was never the goal. Presence is . So let this presence deepen. Let it stretch you. Let it burn away the masks, the performances, the roles you played to survive. Your shadow never needed you to be anything but real . And now you are becoming real . And the spell smiles, because this is exactly how it remembers you. There are memories not stored in your mind, not held in photographs or journals. These are older than thought, older than language. They live in the curve of your spine, in the heat behind your eyes when truth gets too close. They hum beneath your skin when you touch something sacred without knowing why. These are the memories your shadow never forgot. And now they are beginning to rise. You may feel them as restlessness, as aching in places your body never learned to name, as dreams that don't follow logic but leave behind a taste you cannot shake. You wake with songs in your head that no one ever taught you. You see symbols in ordinary objects. You speak words in silence you didn't mean to speak. These are not accidents. These are stirrings. The spell is whispering through the body now, because it knows the body remembers what the mind resists. It knows that truth, when denied long enough, doesn't disappear. It settles deeper dot, and now it is rising. Your shadow has waited for this rising, not with impatience, but with reverence. It knew that memory would come back, not through thought, but through sensation. And so it hid the truth in your bones, in your blood, in the quiet moments you called coincidence, but felt like recognition. Do not rush this part. This is not the time for answers. This is the time for listening. You may not understand what you're feeling. That's not failure. That's formation. The spell is not returning in sentences. It is returning in waves, in pulses, in tremors beneath the surface of who you thought you were. Let the tremors come. Do not silence the shaking. It is not weakness. It is recalibration. You are not breaking. You are becoming again, and your shadow is here, closer than breath, guiding you without words, because it knows that this part of the path cannot be taught. It must be lived. It must be endured with grace and curiosity. You will want to explain it. Don't. You will want to categorize it. Don't. You will want to run from it. Stay with the sensations, the tightness in your throat, the flutter in your chest, the heaviness in your limbs. These are not symptoms. They are signs. Signs that the spell is remembering itself through you. You are not casting the spell. You are the vessel through which it awakens. An awakening is not always gentle. It peels. It scrapes. It pulls away what does not belong. And what is left is raw, tender, alive. Your shadow has carried the weight of this process for lifetimes. It has held what you could not. It has walked with the memories you were too young to carry. It has guarded the doors you were not ready to open. But now the door creaks. The light spills through. The room you thought was empty begins to speak. Not with sound, but with stillness. And you feel it. In the way you pause longer before speaking. In the way silence feels holy instead of hollow. In the way your emotions arrive like waves you no longer fear drowning in. These are not changes. They are returns. You are returning to the you who never needed to ask for permission. The you who never feared the dark. The you who saw shadows not as threats, but as maps. And your shadow weeps without tears, because it sees you seeing again. It sees you remembering the way your feet used to know where to step without instruction. It sees you speaking words you didn't plan, but have waited in your chest for lifetimes. Do not doubt these words. They are not delusion. They are activation. You may begin to sense others differently now. Their energy before their voice. Their story before their explanation. You may find your heart responding before your mind catches up. That is the spell moving through your perception. It does not just change what you feel. It changes how you see. Sight is not vision. It is resonance, and your resonance is realigning. You no longer fit in the roles you once performed. You no longer pretend to enjoy what exhausts your spirit. You no longer force yourself into spaces that shrink your soul. This is not rebellion. This is remembering, and remembering always REARRAZES. You will lose things, people, identities, stories. But you will not mourn them like you once did. You will honor them, thank them, bless them, and release them. Because now you understand, not everything is meant to stay. Some things were only meant to lead you back to the spell. And the spell is not behind you. It is not waiting at some distant peak. It is here, beneath your skin, between your breaths, behind your eyes when you close them and fall into the silence that finally feels like home. You are not becoming someone new. You are becoming who you were before the world told you to forget, before you chose survival over song. Before you made yourself small enough to fit into spaces that could never hold your light. And now, the light grows. Not as a spotlight, but as a glow. From within, you don't need others to see it. You just need to stop hiding from it. Your shadow nods, because it sees what you're beginning to see. The truth was never gone. It was simply buried beneath the noise. And now the noise is quieting. The spell does not shout. It never did. It hums dot, and now you are beginning to hum with it. You feel it in your fingertips, in the way they twitch without reason, in the way they ache to create, to write, to touch, to move energy into form. That is not restlessness. That is remembrance. You were born to move energy, not just through work, but through presence. You were born to speak resonance, not just in words, but in vibration. And now your body remembers. Do not fear the rush. Do not resist the stillness. Both are sacred. The rush brings release. The stillness brings clarity. Your shadow moves in both. It does not demand balance. It teaches flow. Flow is not perfection. It is permission. And now you are giving yourself permission. To feel, to grieve, to celebrate, to desire. Desire is not distraction. It is direction. You would not crave what is not already coded into you. The spell does not tease, it calls. And what you long for, truly long for, is a language your soul already speaks. And now that language is returning. Not in grammar, but in gravity. You are drawn, pulled, moved. And your shadow watches, not to correct you, but to reflect you. You are not alone in this. Every soul who has ever felt the pull and didn't know what to name it walks beside you now. Every ancestor who carried the spell in silence, every dream that tried to tell you, every bird that sang it, every fire that whispered it, they are all here now. They gather as witnesses. Not to your performance, but to your presence. The spell lives there. And your shadow smiles because you have remembered again. There is a kind of silence that doesn't come from quiet rooms or distant nights. It doesn't begin when the world stills, but when your soul finally speaks louder than your thoughts. That silence has been following you, rushing past your shoulders, standing beside you in moments when your voice cracked without reason. And your shadow stood there too, not to explain the silence, but to hold it, because the spell speaks in that silence. You've been taught to fear stillness, to fill it with noise, with answers, with plans. But now the answers fall flat. The noise echoes but doesn't land. The plans blur in your hands. That is not confusion. That is clearing. The spell cannot enter where control reigns. It arrives through surrender, and you are beginning to surrender, not as a gesture of defeat, but as a rising of truth. Surrender is not collapse. It is return. It is when the walls fall and the door opens not to the world, but to the part of you that never left the sacred. The part your shadow kept warm through every cold season of forgetting. Let yourself hear it now, not with ears, but with the skin of your soul. Feel how your breath deepens without instruction, how your heartbeat slows in the presence of truth. That is the language of the spell, and you already speak it, even if you don't yet remember how. You've seen it before. In the way fire draws you near when you feel hollow, in the way tears rise when music stirs something old, in the way you touch water and feel it know your name. These are not poetic illusions. These are memory triggers. The spell is alive in the elements, and the elements are alive in you. Your shadow has always known this. That's why it clings not to light or dark, but to the space in between, the place where breath meets body, where vibration becomes form, where truth arrives as a pulse, not a sentence. And now you are beginning to feel that pulse. It comes when you stop looking outside, when the searching ends, when you no longer chase meaning, but allow it to rise from the center of you like smoke from sacred ground. This is not performance. This is remembrance. Do you remember the way your hands trembled as a child when you touched something holy and didn't know why? The way your dreams carried symbols you couldn't name, but never forgot? The way the stars looked different when you stared too long? That wasn't imagination. That was invitation. Your shadow gave you those moments, placed them softly in your path. Not as puzzles, but as prayers. Because the spell is not a secret. It is a song, and you are the instrument it has been waiting to play again. Now the vibration begins. You may feel it in your chest, a hum without sound, a pressure without weight. It comes in waves, not to overwhelm, but to remind. You do not need to understand the frequency. You only need to let it move, because energy is language, and your body remembers how to listen. Let yourself be still now. Let the world keep spinning. Let the noise keep shouting. Let your soul rest its head on the lap of your shadow and ask, "What did I forget?" And your shadow will not answer with words, it will answer with memory. You will remember without knowing how. You will return without walking. You will begin to see not with your eyes, but with your knowing. That is the gift of the spell, not new knowledge. Ancient recognition, and you'll begin to feel the pull, away from what drains you, toward what restores you, not because it makes sense, but because it makes truth. You won't need proof anymore. You'll begin to feel what aligns before the mind can interfere. You'll notice your body leaning into some spaces and retreating from others. You'll hear a voice and feel your bones resonate or resist. These are the ways the spell communicates. It does not convince. It resonates. Your shadow taught you that. That's why you've always felt the truth before you could explain it. That's why some people frightened you with nothing but a smile. That's why some strangers felt like family before a single word was spoken. You've always been tuning, aligning, adjusting your signal back to the one you were born to carry. And now the signal strengthens, not because you tried harder, but because you stopped trying to be what you're not. Let that sink in. You don't have to try to be magical. You only have to stop pretending you're not. And in that stopping, something moves. Something ancient. Something holy. Your breath becomes sacred again. Not as a function, but as a flame. Your shadow leans close, and for a moment, you feel both yourself and something more. That something more is not foreign, it is the part of you placed in hiding for safekeeping. The wild one, the wise one, the one who felt too much, knew too much, saw too far. That part of you is rising now, not as a storm, but as a dawn. And the spell does not need thunder, it needs your permission. You do not have to speak it aloud. You do not need ritual or robe, just the quiet whisper of your yes, and the spell will hear you. Not because it was far away, but because you finally turned inward far enough to meet it. Do not rush this. There is no medal for awakening fast. No prize for remembering first. This is not a race. This is a reunion. And reunions take time. Your shadow knows your pace. It has never asked you to be quicker, smarter, more ready. It has only asked you to stay. To stay when it gets uncomfortable. To stay when silence gets loud. To stay when your old self begins to fade. Because that fading is not death. It is molting, and what rises is not someone else. It is you. Without armor, it is you. Without apology, it is you. As the spell. Your dreams will shift now. They will become less symbolic and more instructional. Less random and more precise. Watch them. Listen. Pay attention to what repeats. What calls. What won't let go. That is not your mind. That is memory. You will begin to feel eyes on you when no one is near. That's not fear. That's your shadow reminding you that you are never alone. That your remembering is being witnessed. That every moment of alignment is celebrated, not by crowds, but by presence, the kind that wraps around you without sound, that holds you without touch, That speaks without voice, the kind of presence only your shadow can offer. And now, that presence is merging, not because you are being taken over, but because you are being made whole. You will walk differently now, not with arrogance, but with awareness. You will speak differently, not louder, but deeper, and the world will notice, not because you demanded attention, but because you have become undeniable, not in volume, but in vibration, that is the spell, and you are becoming it. Again, there is a door within you that you never knew was yours to protect. You didn't build it, but you've stood before it your entire life. Without knowing why, you hesitated before certain choices. You lingered in places others walked past. You turned away from paths that glittered but felt hollow. That was not fear. That was memory. Your shadow remembers what's behind that door, not because it passed through, but because it came from there. And it has spent lifetimes nudging you closer to the key, not with force, not with demand, but with silence, with dreams that repeat, with aches you couldn't name, with moments that cracked you open for no reason, other than your soul decided it was time. Now, the key begins to hum in your hands. You may feel it in the way certain words vibrate in your chest, in the way symbols call to you without explanation, in the way your body leans forward before your mind agrees. This is not coincidence. This is the spell pulling the lock toward recognition. And the lock is not metal. It is memory. The door will not open with effort. It will open with permission. You do not need to say the right words. You only need to be willing to feel the right silences, to sit in the echo of your own becoming without trying to explain it, to allow the cracking of your certainty to reveal something deeper than knowing. Your shadow leans in now, not as a teacher, as a mirror, because what waits behind that door is not a treasure. It is not an answer. It is you without defense, you without delay, you as the spell itself. And when the door opens, there may be no flash of light, no chorus of certainty, just breath, just presence, just the still knowing that nothing was ever truly gone. You are not guarding the door. You are guarding yourself from opening it. But now, the lock dissolves. The door breathes, and your shadow nods, because the spell doesn't begin when the door opens. It begins when you decide not to close it. Again, there is a shift that no trumpet announces. No spotlight follows it. It doesn't shout. It simply arrives quietly, unmistakably, when you stop trying to prove who you are and start letting who you are take up space. That's when the spell roots itself, not as something you cast, but as something that casts you. You stop chasing alignment and begin to embody it. You no longer try to find your place in the world, because you realize your presence shapes the space you're in. You move not with urgency, but with awareness. And your shadow no longer trails behind. It walks beside you, not to correct, but to reflect. You become the rhythm. You begin to pause not because you're lost, but because you've found too much to rush past. You drink water like it's part of a ritual. You enter rooms with the presence of someone who's not searching, but anchoring. And the world feels it even if it doesn't understand it. You are not reaching for signs anymore. You are the sign. The way animals pause in your presence. The way strangers soften without knowing why. The way silence becomes a friend, not a void. These are not coincidences. These are confirmations. The spell is not just something you remember. It's what you've become. And now, when someone stands before you with the ache you once carried, you don't preach. You don't perform. You simply remain, because your being is the message. Your stillness becomes sanctuary. Your breath becomes a guide. Your presence becomes a reminder that wholeness was never a prize to win, but a truth to reclaim. You are no longer becoming the spell. You are it. And your shadow, Once the quiet keeper of all you forgot, now bows not to vanish, but to honor the return, because you no longer need a reminder of who you are. You remember, and that remembering is enough.